focus on hitting your goals in every area of your business. Remember, the universe rewards the bold. A leader has to take the risks.
And we are live. Okay. Welcome to the Wealth on the Beach podcast. My name is Daniel Alonzo, and as always, I'm your host. I'm always bringing you some of the greatest minds in the United States, in North America, all over the world, and just excited about being here with one of the absolute greats in business today, one of the great young minds in business today. His name is Ian Prukner. And by the way, this is episode number 54, man. We're jamming here and just having a great time. Hey, look, from a church guitarist, okay, to a financial services stud at 23, to a huge, massive leader in that financial services business, to building other leaders himself, and of course becoming a multi-millionaire. And today is an author. We're going to be talking about his book. His name is Ian Prukner. Like I said, married to his wife Jessica for 14 years, 3 kids. Kaylee, right? Is that right?
Yep.
Okay.
She turned 11 yesterday.
Kaylee is 11. Zach is 9. And Zoe, right? Is that correct?
Zoe, yeah.
All right. Incredible family. Glad to have you on with us today, Ian. What does byproduct mean? Tell me a little bit about byproduct.
You know, the word byproduct really, I mean, it has a couple of definitions, but it's what you get after you are trying to get what you got, right? Okay, it's the leftover. It was maybe the unintended result of a couple of things before. You mixed a couple chemicals and you were trying to get thing A, and all of a sudden you're left over with thing B that maybe you weren't expecting, but here it is, you have it. And so the idea of byproduct, the idea of the book and the title of the book in and of itself is a byproduct. I'm not an author, although I guess technically I am now, right? But I wasn't an author. I had no desire to write a book. I didn't say, one day I'm going to write a book about all the things I learned. I set out to win in business and to build people and to build leaders. And as a byproduct of a decade worth of leadership in the trenches, really, of American business, I had all this stuff that I didn't really intend to ever get. It was created as a byproduct of doing the work to build the business that I'm like, wow, this is actually the stuff that helped me to build the business. These are the things I learned. This is what I accumulated over those years that have helped other people to learn. And so ironically, Daniel, the book itself is a byproduct. That's why I named it that. It wasn't the intention. It was a secondary outcome that happened to be pretty cool.
Well, I think that's really cool, man. And I think that is a genius title, because it really is. I mean, everything that we get in life is a byproduct of our habits, of the things that we've done over however long we've done it. It's all byproduct, man. It all comes from the fruits of our labor. So
that's right.
Incredible, exciting. And we're going to talk more about the book, but I want to kind of dive deep a little bit into your story. I want, there are people out there that they don't know Ian Prukner like I know Ian Prukner, and they want to know you and they want to know your story. So tell us a little bit about, like, what did your parents do and what was your childhood like?
Sure. Well, my dad immigrated here from the Czech Republic during the middle of the Cold War when Soviet tanks came in and annexed his town. And, communism is becoming a fun thing to talk about, right, these days. But if you ask anybody who lived under communism, they would just leave everything for a shot to escape. And that's what his family did. They left with $300. They got on a plane to the United States on political asylum. He started working at a bakery in Royal Oak, Michigan, didn't know English, didn't know anybody here, and just started working midnights at a bakery, and just retired now. My mom worked for a bank her entire life, working in compliance and other things. And, so like my childhood, it was awesome. I hear all these stories about my childhood and all these mistreatments. I mean, my parents, Daniel, were about the best example of great parents that you could ever have. Still married, loved each other, loved us, spent time with us, did whatever they could. We didn't have any money, like no significant amounts of money. Like I can remember, Christmas was like, you get $150 spent on you and that's it. There's not a dollar more. So we didn't have all sorts of stuff, but we had a great life, and I never felt like we did without. And my parents really modeled for me what a successful relationship looked like, what it meant to follow through, what it meant to do things maybe you didn't want to do, but you needed to do. They were your responsibility. And so my childhood was great. I have a younger sister. She had a great childhood. And I really kind of came up through school, went to college on a free ride for academics. Talking to me, you wouldn't know that. But apparently I'm okay at taking tests. And went to school, got a degree in education. I thought I'm going to be a teacher. My research into that, Daniel, was one of my favorite teachers in high school said, you should be a teacher. And so that was all the research I did. I said, sounds good. You think I should be a teacher? That's what I'll go do. So I student taught, Daniel, and I hated it. Oh my gosh, my heart broke. I was teaching freshmen English second language in a really rough part of Detroit. And I was like basically putting out gang fights every day. Like I wasn't teaching anybody. And I'm like, I cannot do this with the rest of my life. So I'd gone all the way through school, gotten this degree, and had no intention of ever using it after I taught.
So let me stop you real quick and just ask you, I mean, as far as education is concerned, let's talk just real briefly about the state of, regular education in America and in Canada today. And I want you to talk about that just real quickly, because I think there's a challenge. It's a big challenge. And by the way, what happened to you is and I'm not saying it was a waste of your life or anything like that, but as far as time value of money, I mean, you went through that period of your time. You could have been doing something else, maybe even more productive, but because nobody ever really guided you to make a better choice whether to go to college or not, you spent a bunch of time, a bunch of, maybe money, I mean, at least time value of money you lost in that endeavor. What do you think about the state of college today, man?
I'm not a big fan of it. I'm glad my doctor has a degree. I'm glad my attorney has a degree. I'm glad my accountant has a degree. I'm glad the people who made my cars have degrees. But I think for most people, the things that you need to win, which are mental toughness, a great idea, strong work ethic, fantastic relationships, great character, those aren't things that are taught in school, right? They teach you what to think, but not how to think. And so, I think there are specialized degrees that are good, that are useful, that you need those things. But I think by and large, for most people, Daniel, they'd be far better off finding a need and filling that need and, reading self-development. It's like they say, Jim Rohn says, right? Formal education will make you a living, but self-education will make you a fortune. And, I valued my time at the university, but I could have done a bunch of other things that would have been more valuable, so I didn't regret that, but I didn't know any better at the time. Knowing what I know now, what I tell my kids is, listen, if you want to be a specialist in something, we'll pay for you to go to school. That's fantastic. But there's no such thing as liberal arts, right? You're not going on mom and dad's dime for a liberal arts degree. You're not getting a sewing degree, okay? You're going to go for something that's specialized, or we'll give you some of that money. You start a business. We'll help you buy a franchise. We can buy real estate for you. But you're not just going to go aimlessly like, 70, 80% of the undeclared population. What's your major? I'm undeclared. I don't know. I'm just taking gen eds right now till I figure it out. What sort of scam is that, right? Pay us $25,000 a year to spend all your time trying to figure out what you want to be when you grow up, and then get a degree. And then, it's like the stats are mind-boggling on how few even work in their degree.
50% of college graduates go back home and live with their parents after they graduate college. I mean, are you kidding me?
They made a movie about that. It's called Failure to Launch, right?
Oh my God, yes.
Oh my gosh.
I mean, it's wild, Ian, because, and what's scary about that is in 4, 5, 6 years that they went to college, nobody ever taught them how to not go back and live with their parents. Like nobody ever taught, like let's teach that part. Like when you get out of college, the first thing you need to do is buy a home. Let's teach you how to buy a home. Let's teach you how to own a business. Let's teach you how to run a company. Let's teach you how to, right? But they don't teach any of that crap, but they'll teach you all this other stuff that literally has nothing to do with making money or building a life, a successful life. So you put out all these gang fights every day, and then you're thinking like, whoa, dude, like how did you get into financial services, man?
Yeah, so you know what? I student taught, I hated it. I was a musician, I loved music. I was pretty good at music. I was playing in a band. And so I actually ended up starting to work for a local church as a music director, right? And I really loved it. It wasn't a job to me. It was something I felt really passionate about. It essentially paid me to play music every day, right? If any of you know musicians, if you can get paid to play music, you're the happiest guy on the planet Earth. So that's what I was doing. I was working for a church. I was newly married. And about 6 months into our tenure there at that church, I got called into the boss's office one day. And I don't know if you've ever been like called into a meeting where it's not going to go well. And like the air is just thick, right? With like, you're like, I don't know what's going to happen here, but something not good. And he sat me down. He said, you know what, Ian, I'm really sorry to tell you this. The church is in not a good place financially. We're behind on some things. Effective immediately, we're cutting everybody's pay 10%. So I worked there, my wife worked there. We were on thin ice to begin with, right? I mean, we weren't saving money. We had debt like everybody else. I mean, we were really hand to mouth. And in that one moment, Daniel, our financial life flipped upside down. We did the math and I was making 30 grand. My 10% pay cut was $3,000. It was $250 a month. When we did the math, her pay cut, we kind of absorbed. Mine, we're $250 a month negative. And so radar went up about what can I do to make $250 a month? So I'm working at the church. I'm teaching music lessons 20 hours a week. I'm singing at people's weddings. I'm singing at people's funerals. I'm doing anything I can to make a little bit of extra money. And now we're negative. So I actually put in an application to be a night manager at Rite Aid. And I was going to make like $14 and something cents an hour. And I was going to go midnight to 6 a.m. 3 nights a week. So that was my plan, was have a fourth job doing that. And my boss, the same guy who cut my pay, about 2 months later, he came to me and said, Ian, are you still looking to make extra money? And I'm like, Steven, that is the dumbest thing you've ever asked me. You see what you pay me, right? Okay. You see what you pay me. Of course I'm looking to make extra money. And he says this, he says, there's this guy that goes to the church. He does this thing. That's what he calls it. He says he does this thing and you could do it part-time and you'd be good at it. You should go talk to him. So I went and talked to him. I didn't know any wealthy people. I didn't come from money. I'd never been in a big house. And I pulled up to this guy's house, Daniel, and honestly, I was like, if he's not selling drugs to kids, I'm in. I'm going to do whatever it is. Whatever it is he's doing, I'm going to learn, because I understood something. He knew something about making money that clearly I did not. And so I looked at it, worst case, as an opportunity to learn from somebody who'd been really successful at something. So I dove in, just kind of part-time. And my first year, I made $100,000. I couldn't believe it. I was making $27,000. I was wealthy, right? I mean, I'm 23. I live in Michigan. You can do okay on 60 grand a year household income. And I go from making 27 a year to 143,000 a year. I'm like, woo! I thought I died and went to heaven. I mean, it was absolutely unbelievable. And, you know, we just kind of kept doing those things that we did when we started. And over time, that built to what's now a 7-figure annual recurring income. And it's been a wild ride. I never would have guessed it. I didn't go to kindergarten and say one day, like, I'm going to be in finance. Like, that's what I want to do, right? I was drawing pictures of birds' nests in kindergarten, like all the other kids, and dinosaur claws. And I just kind of fell into it. You know, it's really kind of a...
And so, I mean, who was that first mentor for you, man? I mean, who was that first person looking back saying, man, this dude or this lady or somebody like changed my life? Who was that?
Yeah, that's a great question. The answer is it was my boss from that church. So prior to him introducing me to the financial business, part of my job description, Daniel, I had to read these certain sort of self-improvement books. He would just get a book for everybody on the staff and you had to read it and we had to talk about it. And so I read a couple of books that totally changed my thinking before I was ever shown an opportunity in business, to start thinking like a business person, start looking at cause and effect in life. Like, hey, you're not doing well financially. Well, why? Why aren't you doing well financially? Well, maybe you're not solving enough people's problems. Maybe you're not having a skill set and it just caused me to, instead of just bumping through life and saying, hey, the world isn't fair, I started learning about how the world actually worked, and then, you know, using some of the things I was learning to kind of mold myself to that. So instead of me and the world being like this, which is most people, right? I want the good old days. I want the union. I want the this. I want the Social Security. What they want and what the world is giving them is different, and they just clash with it all the time and lose. I started learning how to mold myself through this guy, right? So he was my first real mentor. Today, we're still great friends. I just saw him a couple of weeks ago in Las Vegas, and just a great guy, and really took an interest in a liking to me in my own personal development.
Do you remember any of those first books that he recommended?
Absolutely. A book that changed my life was called If How-Tos Were Enough, We'd All Be Thin, Rich, and Happy, by a guy named Dr. Brian Clemmer. And it's this little book. You probably read it in an hour. But the concepts he had in that book, Daniel, they changed my life. I mean, they really did. I saw things from a different perspective, so that when opportunity found me, I could recognize it. I'm like, hey, this looks like something that I'm reading about that could really change my life. Instead of being like, I don't know, I need to think about it, I need to pray about it, I was like, no, this looks like what I read about, and so I'm going to take a shot here because I want my life to be different than it is now.
Well, why do you think people use the I want to pray about it so often? Why do you think that comes up? I mean, when there's a transition, a time that they can change their life, they're like at that moment, why do they use that so often? And then they don't change, and they never change after that.
Sure. I think it's a defense mechanism. It's an excuse that people can use to abscond their responsibility for their own decisions in life. You know, like, listen, I'm a pastor. I think prayer is vitally important, but like, we don't need to pray about whether we cross the road or not, what to eat for dinner probably, whether or not we should get out of debt, make more money, take care of our families. I don't think those are things that need to be prayed about. I think those are things that are clearly written about, you know? So I think a lot of people do that because it gets people off their case, right? Like, oh, just say I need to pray about it, people will leave me alone, and then I don't have to make a decision. But like, you know, Geddy Lee from Rush says, when you choose not to decide, you still have made a choice. And so that's what they're doing. They don't want to say no. They don't want to own the responsibility of declining opportunities. So they just kind of scapegoat it off there, you know?
Hey, Ian, you know, look, you've had an incredible ride, man. I mean, you went from 23 years old, broke and in debt, to today have an incredible lifestyle. But there had to be some struggles. I know I had some struggles along the way. I know I had some adversity along the way. What are some of the challenges that you would say you had, and how did you overcome them?
It's a great question. I did have challenges. Virtually all of them were self-inflicted. So I was very fortunate that I did not have a lot of outside challenges. However, my inside challenges were numerous and pretty substantial. You know, I was not a good relationship builder. I'm that quintessential A-type person. If you and I and two of our buddies are in a high school group class in science class, and we've got a group project, I'm the guy that's like, you three go sit in the corner, I'll be done in half the time and we'll get an A. So you just leave me alone and I'll do it. I was the guy that did it. I was not the guy that figured out how to endear people to himself to do something even greater together. And so that took me a long time. I'm still not great at it, if we're being honest, but it's not a liability in my life anymore. I'm aware enough that I need to work with people and push people up and see their strengths and grow them, that it's something that I cognizantly look for. But that was a big one. I mean, I just blew so many great people out of the business, Daniel, because they weren't running like me. I'm like, are you a runner? No. Okay, next, right? And what I didn't know is that I could have built them into somebody who would have created something really great in their life over time. So that was a big deal for me.
Although I just want to jump in real quick. I mean, because I relate to you big time on that area because I'm an A guy too, and you know me. I mean, I'm running. I'm going. I'm always blowing and going.
Yeah.
But do you think? And just this just popped in my mind right now because I've been talking a lot about this. Do you think though, Ian, because you were a runner and you didn't allow a lot of those people that just were not ready, you maybe more so found because you were just running. You ended up finding the people that wanted to run with you. Because I think one of my biggest mistakes in business, period, because I do believe like you, I blew a lot of people out too, man. I blew them out. Now I think maybe some of these people were probably going to get blown out anyways.
Oh,
I just
sure.
I just blew them out a little earlier.
Yeah.
But do you think that sometimes, because my biggest mistake, man, is I wasted so much time trying to pull the people with me versus, because it's almost like sometimes you're wanting them to win more than they want to win themselves.
Sure,
Do you
sure.
relate to any of that? What do you say about that?
Yeah, well, absolutely. I think that's a common thing that happens to leaders. I was so bad with my relationship building, Daniel. I did not have any of that by default. If you weren't running, I just didn't pay attention to you. But I think that to go back to kind of the first part of that question, it did hinder me because I did lose some people that with the systems I have now would have been caught, taught, grown into great leaders, and they just don't exist today. The flip side of it is I think every weakness is also a strength in some way. And it really did force me, all right, you're not running, I need somebody who will. And it forced me to go through a lot of people quickly that maybe I would not have gone through had I been a little bit better on the relationship side. So what would have happened? I don't know. I mean, there's so many different moving parts. I don't think we could have figured out, well, if I was better then and I didn't go get as many people, what would have happened? But it was a big issue. And a lot of people waste a lot of time with the wrong people. And then they burn out because they're like, nobody wants it like me. And that's just not true. There are people who want it like you. You just haven't found them yet. And, leaders are found. Leaders are found. They're not developed. And that's a hard thing for a lot of people to understand. They're found, they're not developed. They can develop themselves, but we can't develop them. We can give them a roadmap, we can give them feedback, we can give them mentorship. Ultimately, they have to take it and use it, right? And a lot of people don't like that. They want to think, well, I have something to do with it. And we really don't. I was ready. My boss at the church was there. And there was a mentoring relationship. If I wasn't ready, no amount of books, no amount of forcing me to do stuff, no amount of accountability would have changed anything in my life.
I think this is turning out to be one of my favorite podcasts. This is the Wealth on the Beach podcast with Daniel Alonzo. We are here with Ian Prukner, multi-millionaire, built an incredible financial services business in 10 years. This guy was making $1 million a year in just about passive residual income. And of course, we talk a lot about passive residual income and reoccurring income. Hey, why is that so important that we have that, Ian? And how much more valuable are we to society if we're self-sustained and have enough cash flow to take care of all of our needs?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's everything. Like, there's your spiritual life, your family life, your health. And then there's creating residual income. I mean, I don't see a fourth priority that comes in higher than that. And the problem that most people have in life, Daniel, in fact, the problem that most everybody has in life is they have residual bills and linear income. So whether or not you stay in your house next month, you're going to have a mortgage payment, you're going to have some utility payment, you're going to pay taxes. Whether or not you're using it, if you're out of town, you're on vacation, the bills are coming. They're coming whether you do anything or not. And so when you're on the rat wheel of trying to keep up with this set of bills that will never stop. I mean, you could pay off your house, Daniel. You still got taxes. You still got insurance. You still got utilities. It's never going to stop. If we don't figure out how to create an income source that is larger on a recurring basis than our recurring expenditures, we will always be in the rat wheel. we'll never be free. And when we're not free, we're not living life as we were designed to live. Human beings were not designed to be captives. We weren't designed to be under oppression by other human beings or systems. We're born to be free. That's what our country's about, right? Is this ragtag army said, we'd rather be free than even be alive, if that's what it comes to. And they fought for that. And yet so many of us were willing to give up our freedom for, quote, stability. And there really is zero stability when your income comes completely off you. When your income is coming residually off of people, off of real estate, off of intellectual property, whatever that is, it frees you up to be in 2 or 3 or 8 or 10 places at once, right? If all your time, Daniel, doesn't have to go to making a buck, your time can go to changing the world, right? Your time can be multiplied. You can set up 2, 3, 4 sources. You can take that money, hire other people to make impact. I mean, really, without a recurring income, we're only able to serve ourselves in any real capacity. We're just 1 or 2 weeks ahead of that domino that's about to fall in our life, right?
But Ian, man, I mean, you're telling me that, you know, to go make this money and get wealthy and financially independent, but you know, I'm too spiritual for that. And, you know, I don't know. I mean, if you know, money is the root of all evil, and how do I take care of that challenge that's going on in my mind, man?
Sure. Yeah. So I think a great place to start is the truth. And so we missed one word in what you just said. It's not money's the root of all evil. The love of money is the root of all evil, right? And what does it mean to love money, right? The Bible says you can't serve 2 masters. You can't serve both God and money, right? And what I found is when money is serving you, Daniel, there's really not an urge to serve it, right? There's not. When money's working for you, you're not working for it. And the irony is, and this is going to be tough for some people to hear, but it's the truth, right? Is, you know, the most materialistic people, the people that are the most controlled by money, the people who love money the most are generally the people who have the least of it. They're concerned about it all the time. It occupies their thoughts. They spend inordinate amounts of time trying to accumulate it, trying to keep it, worried about it. And you can't serve God and money. If you can't leave your job tomorrow to go to Africa on a mission, if God tells you to do that, are you serving God or are you serving money? Which one is it? But see, when you get free, money serves you. Money serves you. And now you're not concerned about having to serve it. You know, I don't think about money hardly at all, right? Like I do bills once a month. Everything's on auto pay. I figure I should have about this much in these accounts. And that's it. I mean, I don't worry about it because I know there's enough and I know there's more than enough coming, whether or not I'm out of bed today going to get it, right? And that's where you're free to do the things that maybe God really wants you to do in your life.
But I don't know, you know, Ian, I feel like, man, it's just like one of those pyramid things. And you got to, I don't want to recruit my friends and my neighbors and things like that and be a burden to people like that. I mean, how do I wrap my head around that one?
Sure. Well, I think that's a good question. It depends on which context you're coming at it from. But the truth is this, right? In America, unless you stole the money, you worked for it. So you made a trade, you gave somebody value, and they said, you know what, Daniel, I liked what you did for me so much. The product you gave me, the service that you provided to me, I would rather have that, which you gave me, than my money. Let's make a trade, right? And so the truth is this, right? If we're not making money, we're really not serving anybody, right? And so, you know, if you're worried about bothering your friends and family, you're not bothering them. If you're helping them to make money and they're helping you to make money, somebody's benefiting here. Nobody's stealing money from each other. Somebody said, hey, what you've done for me is awesome. Here's money. I'd rather have that than the money. And so you really can't win in that sort of business or really anywhere in a capitalistic economy long term. You might scam some people for a little while if you're a scammer, right? But sooner or later, they're going to catch you. If the value you're giving is not in excess of the value you're receiving, that doesn't keep going. Business shuts down, right? And so to be able to look at that and say, hey, profit equals people being served, I think when we look at it in that manner, we're able to feel a heck of a lot better about going out and making a lot of profit. The more profit I make, the more I'm serving people.
And isn't it interesting that there's, I mean, look, I like my parents. I love my parents. I love my family. I mean, I like my neighbor. My neighbor's really cool. You know, I mean, why would I, if I have a solution to a potential problem that they might have, which we could all agree that, 80% of America is probably struggling in a financial way. And if I think maybe I can make a difference for these people, why wouldn't I want to talk?
Right.
I think it would be selfish for me not
Sure.
to at least bring it up. Doesn't mean they have to do business. I remember a buddy of mine was really negative when I joined the business 20 years ago, and he was very, very negative. And I told him, I said, look, dude, I just want you to support me. Just be nice to me. You don't have to join me. You don't have to do anything with me. Just support me. Give me a few minutes of your time. And you know what's interesting is that because he never would allow me that opportunity, his life has never turned out to be as good as mine. I mean, financially, time, freedom, value, all the things that we've been able to do. It's never been as good. And I think if he would have joined me 20 years ago, he would have been amazing at it. So what do you think about that, man?
I mean, I think that that's the truth for most people, right? Most people who are ignorant of opportunity, and ignorant is split it up. It's ignorant, right? Here's some information that you could have that may or may not help you, but at least take the information and then make that decision. And some people say, well, I'd rather ignore the information. I don't even want to hear it. And so when we are ignorant of the information, then we're stuck dealing with only our current thinking, our current beliefs, and our current level of information, and which, by the way, has given us exactly what we have. So if we're not willing to take in new ideas, new concepts, and learn from people, then we'll always be stuck exactly where we are today.
And don't you think it's important that at one point in time, you got to try something. I mean, if you don't ever try anything, you'll never have an opportunity to make a difference in your life or change. And I think that,
right.
We have to, at one point in time, we got to say, you know what? What's the worst case scenario? I remember always thinking, like, what, I go bankrupt? That's the worst case scenario, is like, thank God they don't throw you in jail for going bankrupt anymore. Yeah. So the worst case scenario is you fail and you start over. I mean, do you kind of,
sure.
Like, what's the worst thing that could happen if you try something new and you go for it? What's the worst?
Yeah, absolutely. And that kind of goes back to Carol Dweck's book on mindset, right? The two mindsets, growth and fixed. And people who operate with a growth mindset, they're able to reason through that and say, hey, what's the worst thing that happened? I go bankrupt. Okay, I dust my boots off and I try something else. I get back up, and it's not the end of the world. And guess what? Not only did I have that experience, but I probably learned a lot that'll help me in my next venture. That fixed mindset person says, no, I'm going to stick with what I'm good at. I know this. I'm comfortable here. My skill sets are here, and I'm not going to venture outside of that. And unfortunately, that's a very small box to live in.
How hard is it to work with your wife in business, man?
It's a good question. She's awesome. And I really have no better partner that I could ever think of than her. But it wasn't always that way. In the beginning, she was not super supportive. She was more of that sort of fixed mindset, like, hey, I don't like the quality of our life right now, but here's what I know, and I want to be safe, and I don't want to take chances. And I was always the dreamer, and let's just try this. What if it works? What if we do, right? And so in the beginning, there was some friction there, but it was only because I had been growing and developing and changing the way I thought, and she hadn't been, right? Okay, but as time progressed, she's just a phenomenal leader now, and like, we see eye to eye on almost everything in business, and it's awesome. It's like the honor of my life to be able to work with her, and you see the state of the American family today, and it's in disarray, and a lot of that comes from the fact that moms go in this direction 10 or 12 hours a day with this set of friends, this set of expectations, this set of responsibilities, these things on her mind, these things on her plate. Dad's going the opposite way 10 or 12 hours a day. This thing on his mind, this set of friends, this set of responsibilities. Kids are out here doing this thing and that thing. And we come together as a family unit for 30 minutes or an hour or 2 hours a day. And everybody's on different pages, carrying different concerns. And we come together as a family unit for 30 minutes or an hour or 2 hours a day. And everybody's on different pages, carrying different concerns. And everybody's on different pages, carrying different concerns. And all of a sudden we look up 10 years later, we're like, I don't know you. Who are you? Where did you go? And they've been going that way. You saw them every day going that way. And one of the things that I love about working together with Jessica is that we have the same goals and the same dreams, and we're working together at the same things. And so when we get there, we're not there by ourselves. It's not a private victory. It's a together victory. I think that that's really important.
Makes it really special. And so you live in like 2 states pretty much, right? So tell us a little bit about the dream, Ian, and like how, I mean, first of all, working with your partner is incredible. But how awesome is it to live a dream life today because of passive income and residual reoccurring income?
Yeah, you know, if it's really hard to explain. It's like trying to explain blue to a blind person. How do you tell them that other than it's incredible? You know, for 10 years plus now, you know, we've gotten up when we wanted to get up and went where we wanted to go. We've traveled to the greatest places in the world. And, you know, we live half the time in Florida, technically a little more than half the time now, and half the time in Michigan. We're up in Michigan right now recording this. And, you know, it's just unbelievable to have like dream homes and like I live on an island in Florida on the intercoastal. I mean, I had pictures of that up, Daniel, on my dream board, like my white picket fence overlooking the water. I mean, it's exactly where we have it. It's unbelievable. We are building this gorgeous property on 20 acres on an all sports lake in northern Michigan. It's awesome. Like I pinch myself sometimes, like I can't really believe that happened to me, right? But I spent so much time and effort and energy thinking about it, visualizing it, working towards it. So I mean, it's just special to have that as a reality. And it, you know, it's super cool. You know, most people go on vacation, they're packing, they're spending all this time. We're like, hey, you want to fly down to Florida this weekend? Sure. We grab a backpack and we go. You know, it's like I have an entire set of Florida clothes, and you just get on the plane and go. You know, it's total freedom. And I think that's the best part. You know, my daughter's birthday was yesterday. We just decided to take her to Cedar Point for a day, bought the ultra fast passes. We just rode and went on everything. You just don't have to ask anybody. You don't have to tell anybody. You just go and do what you want. And that's such a foreign concept to most people, Daniel. And they're like, you know, I'm pretty flexible at my job. And what I always tell people is, don't confuse flexibility with freedom, right? Okay. Just because you have a little longer leash than most people, you're still on the leash, right? Just test that thing. Go hit that electric fence real quick and see what happens to you when you decide like, hey, you know what? I'm going to take the year off. Y'all keep paying me. I'll let you know when I'm ready to come back, and just see how that goes. And we'll see how your flexibility works out. But it's just great. You know, we spent 6.5 months in Florida, Daniel. I saw no clients. I recruited no people. I went to no meetings, and we were still making $100,000 a month. Isn't that unbelievable? I mean, what a deal, right? I mean, that's crazy.
Life is pretty great when you figure it out. And I think the main reason why I'm doing this podcast is because a lot of people need to become aware that there is another level of living. There is another way of living. And the more money you make in corporate America, the more they own you. That's more right. Money you make. I mean, look, you make 100 grand, 200 grand in corporate America, they own your life. And you do anything wrong or anything against what you're supposed to do, boom, you're gone. Just like that. And you got to go start over somewhere else. You got to go do another whole, you know, whatever it is, that try to find another job that pays you the same amount of money. And look, and what I think people really need to be aware of too, Ian, is the fact that, look, when you turn about 50, 55, 60 years old, you get less valuable to that company. Yeah. See, they can get rid of you and pay 2 people for the price of 1. Basically, they can get a 2-for-1 on your salary. And by the way, you don't move as fast. You don't work as fast. Yeah, you have some experience, but you don't move as fast as you did when you were 25, ambitious, hungry, ready to try to go make that $100,000, $200,000. So, you know, both of my dads, I have a stepdad and my biological father, and they both got laid off in their 50s. And people, I think they forget that it might be going good right now, but how important, Ian, is it for them to have a plan for the future? Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's everything. Sooner or later, here's what's going to happen. If you don't own your income source and you don't have it coming from other places, sooner or later, the gravy train's going to stop, right? Because you're going to get laid off, you're going to get downsized, you're going to retire, you die, something happens, and that income stops with you. And that's the most dangerous place in the world, Daniel, is having 100% of your income coming from you, because you have an expiration date, right? We all do, whether it's at that company or it's our life in general or whatever. And so we've got to build something that continues to live on and produce without us, even beyond us, right? And if we don't have that, we are going to be subject to the whims of the corporation, the whims of the economy, and we're going to find ourselves as a victim of that corporate structure or that economic time. And we don't have very much control. See, we thought we had control. We thought we had stability, but really it was a myth. It was a mirage of stability, right? Because when they took the job away, all that stability went with it, right? And so, I mean, you just got to be, no matter where you are in life, if you're not building a residual income that you own, you're off base. You're spending time doing things you shouldn't be doing until that is done, because sooner or later, you're going to need it. You're going to need to have that resource, and you're either going to have built it or you're not going to have built it. Just ask the tens of millions of people who lost their home in the last Great Recession. Listen, those people wouldn't have been losing their home if they had a residual income in excess of their expenses. They could have sat on the couch. They could still be sitting on the couch, Daniel, 10 years later, eating bonbons, and everything would be okay, because they had a recurring income greater than their recurring expenses. It's just everything. God first, right? Family second, health third, and residual income number 4, right? And if you got stuff out of order, you're on the church softball team, you're in Boy Scouts, you love fantasy football, those are all great things. Nothing wrong with that, as long as it's priority 7, 8, 9, 10, and you've got priority 4 there. And that's what most people in our country are trying to do, is they're trying to live the dream before they built the dream. And pretty soon the dream turns into a nightmare when they don't have the resources to keep funding it, right?
Incredible. Well said, Ian. Hey, man, we're going to kind of start winding down now, but what's your favorite book, like right now, or what are you reading right now? What's something?
That's a great question. I'm always reading 3 or 4 different books at the same time. One of my books that I just got through that I really, really liked, the language is pretty tough, but it's by David Goggins, called Can't Hurt Me. And it is really a symposium on mental toughness and a different level of thinking. That's one of the better books that I've read recently. I mean, I've listened to a ton of stuff. Atomic Habits was a good book. Peak Performance was a good book. Craig Rochelle came out with a couple of different books in the last 12 months that have been pretty good. I'm an avid reader. I like to read, but you know what I do, Daniel, is I like to reread my 7, 8, 9 go-to books, the books that are just fundamental truth, a different way of thinking about something. Most people who write a book, what I found is they haven't done anything but write a book. That's what they're trying to do. They're an author. I'm trying to hit it big. And so I'm just putting out regurgitated stuff and hoping that it works, right? Hoping that it works. And, and then the book is just like, okay, there's a couple of good nuggets under 400 pages of fluff. There's a couple books, Relentless by Tim Grover, Breakout by Joel Osteen, Destined to Reign by Joseph Prince. Some of those are spiritual books that I believe have a lot to do with our earthly lives and winning and being successful and fulfilled. Some of them are business books. Some of them are coaching books. But man, I like to go back and I like to reread those things. I mark them up different colors, depending on the date that I read them. And man, some of these things they're tattered because I just want to get everything out of them. And a lot of times people don't understand this. When you read a book this year, then you come back to it 2 years from now. So you're a different person. You're in a different place. You're thinking differently. Your behaviors are different. Your attitudes are different. All of a sudden, that book is totally different to you than it was the first time. So I like to stick with the classics. I do read a lot, but I really listen to most of it. And if it's really good, I'll go back and buy the book.
So you like Audible too, right? Are you an Audible guy? I love Audible, man.
1.5 times speed, right? And
Exactly.
You sound like a chipmunk. And if you say something good, I'm going to pause it. I'm going to go back and write it down. If you're saying a lot of good stuff, I'll put you to 1 and listen to you at normal speed. And if it's really good, I'm going to buy that book and highlight the heck out of it.
Oh, I love it, man. Favorite food? What's your favorite food, man? Go-to food.
Gosh, I'm a foodie, big time. I'm a foodie. I love all sorts of different food. But I'm a pastries guy. Donuts, dadgum strudels, any pies. Anything that has a pastry flair to it, I love.
Oh, that's cool, man. Ice cream or cake? So, well, pastry. So you're a pastry guy. Oh, but you do like the ice cream too.
Woo!
All right.
I love it.
Favorite movie?
You know what? I'm not a huge movie guy. There's a ton of great movies out there. My favorite movie I just saw was Toy Story 4 or whatever one just came out with my kids. That was a good one. I mean, they're all great. I'm just not a huge movie guy, you know?
That's all right, man. Hey, just kind of close out with us a little bit and tell us a little bit about this book that you have, man. I mean, Byproduct, we talked about it up at the top, but tell us why people need to go out and buy this book like immediately. I got mine coming on the way, but you got to make sure if you have not read this book, you get this book in your hand. Why do we need to do that right now?
It's a good question, Daniel. And I think that, you know, as I've led people now for 13 years, what I've seen is this. There are many, many, many really, really great people out there with really great intentions, a lot of skills, a lot of potential. They want to change their life. There's a lot of people listening to this right now who want to change their life. They seriously want to change their life. They're listening to this podcast. They're doing things, they're reading, and yet they're not making the changes, or the changes are not permanent. They change for a little while and then they go back to who they were. And the biggest gap in the world, Daniel, is the gap between knowing what to do and doing what to do, right? Knowing what to do, our thinking like, hey, I know this is what I should be doing, and our action of actually doing that. And what stops us there? And Daniel, this book is the bridge between knowing what to do and doing what to do, and doing it easily and automatically and ultimately effortlessly, right? And the idea is, like you talked about at the beginning, our whole life is a byproduct. Right now, the house you live in, the quality of your relationships, the level of your health, it's all a byproduct of your thinking that create beliefs, that create actions, that create results, right? And Daniel, most people, when they want to change, they start trying to change the action. I want to lose weight. I go to the gym, I start eating better. And I do that for 3 weeks, 6 weeks, 9 weeks, and we lose a little weight and we feel a little bit better. But a year from now, we're back to who we were because we haven't changed that byproduct process. Our thinking didn't change, our beliefs didn't change. We changed our behavior temporarily, but sooner or later, that old action comes back out, right? And how do we reprogram ourselves to have lasting, permanent change and success? And that's what this book is. It is a deep dive into the human psyche of why we do what we do and how to make the changes, And so it's not fluff. It's an easy read, but it's a multiple read. You know what I mean? It's one of those things you're going to read it 2, 3, 4 times to get everything out of it. But if you do those things that are in there, you're going to change your life pretty rapidly in virtually any area that you decide you want to change.
Look, I've been doing a lot of podcasts and I've interviewed a lot of authors and a lot of different successful people. And I just want everybody to know that, look, there's a difference between somebody that talks about being successful and somebody that is actually being successful.
Right.
And you have to recognize this. This is very, very important. I mean, I've based my life learning and getting mentored by people that have already been successful. So it was very easy I think it was very easy for me to become successful. I don't think success was like hard or arduous. I tell people all the time, I mean, you know, I wish I had a better story, but I never struggled financially in my business.
Right.
I always made money. I always, you know, had a level of success. It never happened fast enough. It never happened as fast as I wanted to, but I've always done well and I've never struggled. And the reason why is because I listen to people like Ian, and I learn from people like Ian. I mean, people that didn't just write a book just to write a book, but actually that has done it. I mean, come on, most people don't make $1 million in 10 years. I mean, and obviously, and I'm sure he had a lot of money saved by then. I'm sure he was, completely financially independent. He lived below his means. He made good financial choices. And then on top of all that, he had his marriage right, his family right, his spiritual life right, his kids' life, the relationship with his kids. So I'm just telling you, if you're going to take advice from somebody, you might want to take advice from this guy. Okay. So get the book, read the book, do what he's telling you to do. And look, and the last thing I'll say about that is, there are people out there, Ian, that they don't know you very well. I mean, they've gotten to know you today, but they want to get in touch with you. There are people out in Michigan right now that are like saying, hey, I want to go into business with this guy. I want this guy to mentor me. I want this guy to teach me. So Ian, how do we get a hold of you, man? How do these people get in touch?
That's fantastic. Best way to get in touch with me is on Instagram at Ian Prukner. Just go ahead and follow me on there. Shoot me a message. I do my absolute best to reply to everybody that I can. And that's a great way to connect. I've got a lot of great content out there too to keep you on top of your A game, on top of your thinking, because if we're not watching our thinking, we're not watching the outcomes in our life very closely, and they always follow one after the other, right? So, man, Daniel, listen, you are a stud. You're one of my heroes. Thank you so much for having me on. And I think the content today was fantastic. And it's really awesome what you're doing, building the lives of leaders who are looking for somebody, like you said, that's doing it, that's done it. Daniel's not a guy who's saying, hey, I'm going to be Insta famous because I just showed up here and people think I'm interesting. He's a guy that's done it for a lot of years, 20 years now plus, right? And I remember at one of my first company events, I sat at your table. I was a little, I don't know, regional leader or something probably, and you were making $600,000-$700,000 a year back then, right? And you've been doing this for a long time, and so I second exactly what you're saying. You need to find people who've done it. Don't read a book that somebody puts a cuss word in the title and makes them sound like a hard butt or whatever. Like, that book must be awesome. And what have they done? They wrote a book. Well, what did that qualify you for, right? Maybe you can help other people write a book, but not much more than that, right? Find some people who did it, who won in a bunch of areas in their life, and then documented it. That's the big deal. Documenting the win, not just writing.
Hey, everybody, go follow Ian Prukner right now. Go find us on Instagram. Make sure you follow us. Just want to remind everybody, we're still signing up people every single day for the Wealth on the Beach Club. Every Wednesday, 9 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. It's 1 hour with me. I do a half an hour lesson and a half an hour Q&A. It's going really, really well. Check out our website for all the details, alonzoacademy.com. And as always, follow me on YouTube. Lots of incredible free content there. And as always, dream bigger than ever, but make sure that you do it now. God bless you. We'll see you at the top.